For more than 2 years, the conflict in Ukraine and Lebanon have evolved beyond traditional warfare into tests of strategy and diplomacy. In Ukraine, Kyiv has intensified long-range strikes deep inside Russia, while Moscow responds by increasing pressure on the Black Sea and the front lines. In the Middle East, a different kind of battle is unfolding, not only on the ground but also around the negotiating table. In Rome, American-mediated talks between Lebanon and Israel have produced a new framework centered on pilot zones, raising cautious hopes for implementing Israeli withdrawals while addressing long-standing security concerns. Together, these developments raise a broader question about whether modern conflicts are increasingly being shaped as much by political calculations and strategic pressures as by battlefield gains. Are these new approaches changing the trajectory of these wars or simply redefining how they are fought? I'm Hamorsi. Let's get in focus. Ukraine has launched a 40-day strategic campaign designed to shift the war beyond the front lines by striking Russian energy facilities, military bases, logistics networks, and infrastructure deep inside Russian territory. According to The Guardian, rather than seeking immediate territorial gains, Kyiv aims to impose economic, military, and psychological costs on Moscow while strengthening international support. The campaign has disrupted parts of Russia's energy sector, forced greater investment in homeland defenses, and reduced Western backing, but it has not halted Russia's battlefield offensives. Analysts view the strategy as a significant evolution towards long-range strategic pressure rather than a decisive military breakthrough. Our first discussion takes us to Ukraine, where Kyiv's 40-day campaign has marked one of its most coordinated long-range offensives since the war began, by targeting Russian energy infrastructure, logistics, and military sites deep inside Russia, while Moscow intensifies pressure on Ukraine's Black Sea economy. The campaign has raised a key question: has Ukraine changed the strategic balance of the war, or simply expanded the battlefield? To help us understand these latest developments and what they could mean for the months ahead, we're pleased to be joined from Kyiv by Ivan Us, advisor for the Ukraine National Center. Thank you for joining us this evening, Ivan.
Greetings to you, Reham. Thank you for the invitation, and greetings to all Qnews audience.
It's always a pleasure. Let's get right into it here. Now, Ukraine's 40-day campaign represents a noticeable shift from defending territory to striking strategic targets inside Russia. From Kyiv's perspective, what has changed in Ukraine's military thinking or even strategy?
You know, Reham, I think that the main reason of this 40 days campaign is just to make pressure on Russia to go on the negotiations and to agree on the freezing of the war. Because we understand from previous our attempt to explain to Russia that it's better to stop, that Russia say that we don't need to stop, we are winning this war, why should we stop? And Ukraine trying to explain to Russia that, you know, if you stop this war, it can be beneficial for you, because Ukraine, unlike previous years, now can respond. So if first 4 years of full-scale war, Russia attacked Ukraine, and only situation in Kursk region in 2023 creates a threat to Russian territory. But after that, Russia was sure that nothing really create a threat to them. these long-range missiles, long-range attacks, that Ukraine start to do, that Ukraine attacked more and more Russian refineries, including the biggest Russian refinery in Omsk, approximately 3,000 kilometers from Ukrainian territory. It's demonstration that really Russia has a reason to stop this war. So we will see what will be in next days, but the fact that Ukraine start to press on as long as territory of Russia situated on the long distance from Ukraine and on the Crimea Peninsula, you see like Ukraine step by step create problems for Crimea, for controlling by Russia Crimea and creating big problems there. So that's the main Ukrainian goal. It's that creating to Russia arguments to stop this war. Thank you, Reham.
Well, that's an interesting way of putting it. Now, you mentioned a bit about the campaign's focus on infrastructure in general. Now, the campaign heavily targeted energy infrastructure, logistic hubs, and military airfields, obviously, as you stated, to pressure the Russians into seeing that this is of mutual benefit to end the war. Which of these objectives or targets do you think produced the greatest strategic impact so far, or the greatest pain to the Russians?
You know, Reham, I think that this war on the fifth year turned into a war of attrition, classical war of attrition when economy played a very big role. That's why Ukraine tried to hurt the main part of Russian economy, it's oil. Oil, it's something that give a lot of money to Russians, and they relocate this money to military actions. They directed on the production of more and more weapons and paying their soldiers. So Ukraine targeting Russian refineries. According to Financial Times, Ukraine destroyed 40% of oil processing in Russia. But the specialists say that Ukraine succeeded to destroy approximately 90% of fuel production. That Russia faced the country with an image of the country rich on oil, faced with the problems on their gasoline stations because there is no fuel for cars and there is long lines, and even last days give us information about shootings in these lines. You know, it's a historical parallel. 1917 revolution, first February revolution, happened not due to some political requirements of people. It happened because it was long lines for bread and was lack of bread. Now we have the same situation in Russia, lack of fuel, long lines for the fuels, shootings in these lines, and of course quarrels, and that can create situation inside Russia where internal problems can press on their government to think about solving of the problems inside the country, but not thinking how to annex another country situated near to you. Not only Ukraine, but also talks about Baltic countries and some other Russian neighbors who, according to US intelligence, under threat of Russia attack. Thank you, Riham.
Okay, well, now, from what you're saying there, that basically Ukraine is attempting to cause pain in Russia internally so that they focus on internal issues. But some analysts are arguing that Ukraine has seized the strategic initiative by forcing Russia to defend its own territory, as you just said, but while others are saying that the front line currently remains largely unchanged despite the hurt that Ukraine has caused in Russia. What's your take there? Do you think that the attacks inside Russian territory may affect the course of action in the next few months, for instance, or at least in the near future?
These attacks, first of all, press on Russians to think about security of themselves. So if Russia thinks that, oh, we can only attack Ukraine and there will be no response to us, now these attacks create a menace to them. And they created talks inside Russia that it's probably better to stop this war. If before that, people inside Russia say that, oh, we should attack Ukraine, we should go further and further, now we hear absolutely other statement. More and more people inside Russia say that, guys, let's stop this war. We don't need it. Because it led to economic problems, and as some people's deputy in Russia say that it's better to stop now because we are rather losing then gaining territories. It's big changes in their way of thinking when they understand that they are rather lose than win something. And deep strikes, as we call them in Ukraine, inside Russian territory, they actually create the really feeling of some probably. I don't say that Russia have the fear of that, but nevertheless, it's close to fear that in any part of Russia they could be targeted. Because if Ukraine attacks something situated in 3,000 kilometers from Ukrainian border, it's demonstration of our long-range attack opportunities. Because before that, we dreamed about attacking Omsk. Now we do that, Omsk refinery. And that's the next target that Ukraine thinking. It's Russian ports on the Pacific Ocean. It's Koblina. It's one of four main ports that Russia used to export their oil. We attack Novorossiysk. We attacked Ust-Luga. We attacked actually another Baltic port, Primorskaya. So that's why now Ukraine seriously limited opportunity of Russia received more money because they get money on due to oil, and without money and with the big economic problems inside, really it can happen situation that we see in the First World War when Germany, that has no problems in on their territory, that war on the territory of France and other countries, decided to capitulate just because they understand that their economy is not ready for this war. The same situation Ukraine created for Russia. Thank you, Riham.
Well, yes, I mean, as you said there, the Ukrainians have sort of changed their strategy for economic warfare, but also the Russians have also managed to recalibrate and have increasingly redirected their military efforts towards the Ukrainian Black Sea ports and export infrastructure as well to hurt the Ukrainian economy further. Do you think this is an emergence of a new strategy for economic war alongside the military war? And if so, who will be able to absorb the most losses here? Is it going to be Ukraine or Russia?
Riham, of course, Russia see that Ukraine attacked the economy, and Russia decided to respond on Ukrainian economy too. But it's, as for me, it's natural response from Russia because they understand that when they count on their military power, while Ukraine made different ways, it was not only military power, but it was economic attack too, that Russia understands that, it's better to us to attack Ukrainian economy. But if we return to 2022, start of full-scale war, Russia so block our ports. And for us, it was a big problem to export our grain. Thanks to Black Sea Grain Initiative, in July 2022, we have 4 years for that initiative. On the 24th of July, Ukraine received the opportunity to sell its grain to all over the world because Ukraine is one of the main producers of the wheat, and not only wheat, but cereals too. And now Ukraine actually sees the problem. We have experience of the blocking of our ports, and we try to direct flows to from seaports to river ports, and then river to Ismail, because it's easier to send our grain from that ports to Romania, and then from Romania ports send them to other countries of the world. So we have experience of being blocked by Russian from 2022, and we know how to direct our flows of our cereals. Thank you, Riham.
Okay, it seems you're ready on that front there. But if we could also talk about the Zelensky-Trump relationship. Now, recent reporting suggests that the relationship between the two has improved following Ukraine's long-range operations. In your opinion, how important is it, that political dimension of sustaining Ukraine's strategy as well as maintaining a strong relationship with the United States?
Of course, for Ukraine, it's very important to preserve this good relationship because, first of all, the United States of America give to us very important information. Of course, you see the photos of my house damaged by the Russian rocket attack, but I know that some Russian rockets flying in this moment to our city. So at least I was psychologically ready for that, and we have this information due to the United States of America, who said that Russia now start their rocket attack. Be ready that Russian rocket will hurt your city, Kyiv. actually another moment that Russia can be attacked by Ukraine. I mean Russian refineries. These long-range missiles that I discussed before, due to information that we saw received from United States of America, how better to build the way for our drones to attack Russian territory. So without US information, it could be very hard. So, as I said, intelligence information, it's very important to us. And good relationship with United States is something that help us to really attack Russia territory. Of course, we are waiting for US sanction pressure on Russia. There was no sanctions after Donald Trump appeared in the White House, in Oval Office of White House. Only was one moment when US imposed sanction against two main Russian oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. And now there is big chances to increase US sanctions pressure on Russia after tragic death of Senator Lindsey Graham, who actually was one of co-author of that law that can increase US pressure on Russia by sanctions. So we're expecting to see this law, and that, of course, can be due to a good relationship between Ukraine and US. So that's why for us it's a very important. Plus, of course, the ammunition, US sell ammunition to Europe due to Pearl program, and Europe gives us weapon to Ukraine. Ukraine desperately needs that, and of course now we need, first of all, rockets for Patriot system that can help us to destroy Russian ballistic missiles. And that is why we really need this good relationship with US.
Okay, well, if we could go back to the strikes on Russia. Now, these deep strikes inside Russia have caused disruptions when it comes to the refineries, as we spoke in depth about, and air traffic as well. Do you think that these operations have some sort of influence on Russian political decision-making, or are they primarily a symbolic act here, and it's not going to be enough to pressure the Russians to go to the negotiating table?
Riham, I think that for Russian government, for President Putin and his surrounding, of course, there is no pressure. They think that they are winning at Putin assures that he is winning, but it's a pressure for a Russian ally. You know, several weeks ago, probably months ago, President Zelensky wrote a direct open letter to President Putin. I wasn't sure that the real audience of that letter was not Putin. The real audience, yes, Russian people and Russian allies. So, in this letter, President Zelensky said that, guys, you're losing your money just because President Putin wants to be in this war. Without this war, you will not lose your money, but you're losing it. That Russia constantly press on their people, press on their business to give more money to Russian government on this war. The war that needed to Putin, but don't need it to Russian people and to Russian allies. So that's why I think that now Ukraine just want to say to, first of all, to Russian business, big business, who can do something. Stop your leader, change your leader, and after that there will be peace. You know, a lot of people talk about Korean scenario for Ukraine, like two Koreas, South and North, stop the war and build the military zone. But what helped to that scenario? Help death of Stalin, the leader of Soviet Union, because Stalin needs this war. When Stalin died, no one needs this war, and the war was stopped. That's why we said that this war needed to Putin, substitute Putin, and there will be no war. That's our clear message to Russian allies. Thank you, Riham.
Thank you so much for your insights there. That was Ivanus, for your valuable insights into the evolving military and political dynamics of the war in Ukraine. A similar challenge is now unfolding in the Middle East. In Rome, a US brokered talk between Lebanon and Israel introduced pilot zones as a framework for a phased Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon. The key question now is whether this initiative can deliver lasting de-escalation or prove to be only a temporary arrangement.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
الوضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
As US-brokered efforts to stabilize southern Lebanon have entered a new phase following the Rome talks, with Lebanese and Israeli officials agreeing to advance technical military discussions on implementing pilot zones. Arab News stated that the proposed framework envisions a phased Israeli withdrawal from selected border areas, followed by deployment of the Lebanese armed forces and monitoring by UNIFIL to verify that the zones remain free of armed Hezbollah activity. While both sides view the agreement as a practical step towards implementing the 2024 ceasefire, major challenges remain, including verification mechanisms, Hezbollah's future role, and whether the pilot zone model can be expanded into a broader and lasting security arrangement. The Rome talks mark the most significant diplomatic progress between Lebanon and Israel since the 2024 ceasefire. The proposed pilot zones would allow a phased Israeli withdrawal, deployment of Lebanese armed forces, and international monitoring. The key question now is whether the framework can be successfully implemented or become another stalled diplomatic initiative. Joining us now from Beirut is Ibrahim Shaheen, a political analyst and legal researcher. Thank you for joining us this evening here on In Focus.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Shaheen, let's start off by asking, the Rome talks have been described as the most meaningful diplomatic breakthrough since the 2024 ceasefire. From your perspective, what makes the negotiations different from previous attempts?
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't view it as completely different from the previous negotiation attempts. I wouldn't go as far as to say historic talks, because we're not at a level of a framework agreement yet. We're more, or rather, a comprehensive agreement. We're more in a framework agreement, like a broader framework that sets the tone for the upcoming negotiations that will happen and that will take place between the Lebanese and the Israelis. And of course, as you mentioned in the report, major obstacles remain along the way, including Hezbollah's weapons, the Israeli withdrawal, the reconstruction phase, the possibility of the war going from a bilateral Israeli-Lebanese confrontation into a full-blown regional war involving other regional actors like Iran. So all in all, we're still in a very early stage of the talks happening, despite a framework that was agreed upon in Washington 2 weeks ago. We still have long obstacles along the way. So saying we're in a historic deal or facing a historic phase, I think it's still very early to tell, because we still have a long way to go.
Okay, well, one of the contentious topics here is the pilot zones. The concept of the pilot zones itself is central to this agreement. Do you see this as a genuine confidence-building measure or a temporary mechanism to manage tensions along the border, and maybe even possibly the poison pill within the deal itself, in a way to break down the deal from the Israeli side?
No, I think it's essential for the deal, especially for the Israeli side. It's one of the main conditions imposed by the Israeli ambassador and also the Israeli officials in southern Lebanon. But it's not new, right? Because it was part of an essential part of the talks following the end of the 2024 war between the Lebanese and the Israelis. And it was part of the 1701 UN resolution. As a matter of fact, the Lebanese army was indeed deployed in southern Lebanon 2 years ago, but they have faced major challenges, including limited resources and insufficient support. So the central question today remains the same. What are the guarantees this time around, and what's going to make the difference? If we don't manage to bring answers to these questions, I don't think we're going to see much of a change.
Well, the proposed framework relies heavily also on the Lebanese armed forces assuming responsibility for security areas vacated by the Israelis. Does the Lebanese armed forces currently have the operational capacity to do so, as well as the political backing role? And do you think they'll be capable of maintaining order and peace given the handover?
I mean, to continue my previous answer, as I mentioned, the Lebanese army, of course, it has the capability, but it doesn't have enough tools on the ground to enforce the implementation of the terms of the agreement or even the 1701 agreement. Therefore, France and other countries, especially in Europe, have worked to establish some sort of a conference for Lebanon so they can have enough funds and tools to help the Lebanese army army to implement the necessary military and political measures that are needed and desperately needed in southern Lebanon. But I cannot say that at this point the Lebanese army have enough tools to force the implementation of the terms agreed upon in Washington, or even before that, and the first ceasefire agreement between the Lebanese and the Israelis.
Okay, well, a key element also here of the agreement is basically verifying the designated zones remain free of Hezbollah's military activity.
Yeah, sure.
How practical is the verification system here, and is it ambiguous at this point? And what challenges could possibly arise during the implementation phase? Will there be excuses, for instance, from the Israelis that, the Hezbollah still is in these areas and, continue fighting and violating these security zones?
Right. So I think it's still too early to tell, right? Because we're still at the early stages of the implementation of this framework agreement, as I qualified it previously. So I don't think we still have enough concrete elements. But judging from past experiences, obviously, when the Lebanese army tried to dismantle or to disarm Hezbollah using military ways, basically, they faced major challenges, and it led to multiple confrontations in the past. So I wouldn't say that the next phases of the implementation of the agreement would be any different if we don't see any concrete measures that will be helpful for the Lebanese army to see a change happening on the ground. Because for now, we're still seeing promises, agreements signed in Washington between both parties, but we're not seeing any concrete elements that can help the Lebanese army and the Lebanese government in implementing the terms agreed upon.
But I mean, internally speaking, will the Lebanese government be able to discuss things with Hezbollah? They're not just military aspect of them. They also have their political party, basically. Will they be involved in some sort of negotiating process so that they can guarantee that this deal moves forward, or are they not included in the talks at all?
So rightfully so, as you mentioned, Hezbollah is also represented at the Lebanese government, and it's no secret that Lebanese people, as we all know, they're wonderful, they're really very welcoming, etc. But it's no secret that Lebanese society is as divided as ever when it comes to Hezbollah, and the Lebanese government is no exception. On the one hand, you have one part of the government that is supporting of Hezbollah and its weapons. On the other hand, you have another camp that is wholeheartedly with a peace process with the Israelis and with the negotiations happening between the Lebanese and the Israelis. So we have two different camps, two opposing camps at the Lebanese government, and I think this is where lies the problem. We need to find sort of a middle ground here, a third alternative that combines both positions, so we can strengthen the position of the Lebanese state facing these regional threats, whether it's from Iran, from the Israelis, or from other, or also facing international interference. And I do think if we don't manage to find this kind of common ground between Lebanese people, this what I like to call the Lebanese foundation, involving two or three core principles that unite Lebanese, I do think we're going to be in a very complicated position for the future when it comes to Hezbollah, but also the future of Lebanon and the government of the country.
Well, hopefully it won't get to that. But let's talk about the United States, their role here. It has played a central role in mediating these negotiations. Do you believe that Washington is pursuing a broader regional de-escalation strategy, or is this an initiative primarily focused on preventing another, Lebanon-Israel conflict?
No, I do think we cannot separate the Lebanese scenario or the Lebanese situation from what's going on between the United States and Iran. Despite the tensions happening between the Iranians and the United States days ago, the Americans have changed and have changed their position when it comes to southern Lebanon. And I think it's worth monitoring the shift in tone by the United States when it comes to Lebanon and the Lebanese-Israeli front. We've seen it with this heated phone call between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump weeks ago. We've seen it also with the rising tension between the American Vice President J.D. Vance and a multiple of high-ranked Israeli officials, including members of the Israeli cabinet, people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. We also heard it yesterday with the interview given by Donald Trump to Fox News, saying that he wishes to see a change in the Israeli military presence in southern Lebanon. So it's very obvious that both parties are not on the same page when it comes to Lebanon. And I do think that the United States were keen to, and were very insisting to have a nuclear deal with the Iranians for challenges related not just to the foreign affairs policy, but also for the internal dialogue happening and the criticism received from the Democratic camp, but also from some part of the Republican camp criticizing Donald Trump for his foreign affairs policy. So he was very insisting on having some sort of a deal ahead of the Congress midterms elections that are bound to happen in November of that year.
Okay, if we look beyond the immediate implementation phase, do you believe that the Rome framework could evolve into a more durable security arrangement, or is it likely to remain some sort of limited crisis and it's just a de-escalation strategy at this point for crisis management and mechanism for the moment?
So of course, as I explained in my previous answers, when it comes to this deal between the Lebanese and the Israelis, contrary to what we're hearing on the media, it's not, as I mentioned, a framework agreement. It's just it's more of a broader agreement, a gentleman's agreement, as I like to call it in legal terms. It sets the tone for the upcoming talks. It doesn't mean it's gonna lead necessarily to a peace deal similar to the one signed between the Egyptians, for instance, and the Israelis, the Camp David agreement in the 70s. It's also not similar to the one signed between the Jordanians and the Israelis, the Wadi Araba agreement. It's different even from the Oslo talks and the Madrid talks. This is just a framework that sets the tone for the next phase. So I wouldn't count on it so much. I think we still have a lot of obstacles remaining along the way. That doesn't mean the talks are failing either. I think we're standing somewhere in between now.
Well, do you think that possibly maybe the October elections in Israel for a new cabinet or a new prime minister could possibly affect the future path for the negotiating process between Lebanon and Israel, depending on who wins the elections?
I mean, I'm not sure about Lebanon. Netanyahu, of course, tried to use this as a marketing strategy in his policy facing his opponents. People like Ben-Gvir, Smotrich criticized him. People like Naftali Bennett, who's also running to become a successor of Netanyahu, criticized him. Benny Gantz and many others in the Israeli political landscape. But I do think that the most important file when it comes to Israeli society is more the Iranian file, because once you find a solution for the situation with Iran, it's going to have necessarily an impact on the affiliated militias with Iran and the affiliated parties, including Hezbollah. I think one of the most important allies for Iran in the region is Hezbollah, and the Israeli government. Netanyahu himself knows very well that if he finds a solution for Iran and he manages to find a deal with the Iranians, that's going to have a direct consequence on Lebanon, and therefore it's going to help him in his upcoming elections in October, as you mentioned.
Okay, well, back to the Lebanese army again. Do you think that within this framework that the U.S. will possibly increase its financial support or even equipment support for the Lebanese army in the future?
I mean, we still don't have concrete elements regarding raising and the financial support by the United States. One of the main figures, by the way, that was following the Lebanese file and the support for the Lebanese army was Lindsey Graham, who died days ago. So we're going to see the successor of Lindsey Graham. Who's going to be the successor? Is it someone who's going to be willing to continue what Senator Graham started, or is it someone that's going to have a different vision? Also, the Republican camp is more hesitant when it comes to supporting and helping the Lebanese army. There has been major criticism of the general of the Lebanese army, General Haikal, criticizing him and saying that he's more or less in favor of the presence of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So there's no real trust here between the U.S. administration, Antoine, and the Lebanese army, but we'll have to wait and see how things would eventually unfold. But I'm not very optimistic for the future.
So that means that you're not looking for, or at least optimistic about the possible outcomes from a Trump-Brown meeting at the moment?
No, not a possible. I'm not pessimistic when it comes to the Trump-Brown meeting. I think it's going to happen. Politically speaking, but I'm not sure it's going to lead to direct financial support for the Lebanese army to do its job in southern Lebanon, because the Americans are also thinking about the implications, the direct implications of such a measure on Hezbollah, and in turn it can have an impact on the Iranians, and it might lead to halting the negotiations happening between the Americans and the Iranians. It's already in a very complicated place as we speak. So I do think that the Americans are thinking more in a broader aspect, thinking more of the consequences of the Lebanese file on their ongoing talks with Iran, and the effects it might have on other major issues, including, for instance, the Strait of Hormuz and its impact on the global world economy.
Well, Ibrahim Shaheen, thank you so much for joining us this evening from Beirut and for sharing your thoughtful analysis and
my pleasure.
Developments. Thank you. That was it for In Focus, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more updates, and we will continue to follow the latest developments across the region and around the world here on Q News.